Today's See Today Business Talk, we're going to be discussing the very promising trade and business and investment ties between Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean region, including, of course, Brazil, which is Indonesia's sole strategic partner in the region and the largest trading partner as well. As efforts to boost trade and business ties between Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean region, the Indonesian government established the INALAC, or Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean Business Forum. The forum has been held every year since 2019 in Jakarta, but in 2024, this business forum will be held in Peru. Since the inception of the forum, trade between Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean has risen significantly by nearly 12%. Meanwhile, since 2019 until 2023, total trade between Brazil and Indonesia has risen by over 109% to reach $6.13 billion by 2023. Brazil is Indonesia's largest trading and investment partner from the Latin America and Caribbean region. In 2023, Brazil invested 110 projects in Indonesia worth $6.9 million, while Indonesia's biggest exports to Brazil include crude palm oil, rubber, auto parts, and footwear as well. And to discuss further regarding the very promising trade and business ties between Brazil and Indonesia, I'm joined by none other than the Ambassador of Brazil to Indonesia, His Excellency George Monteiro Prata. Obrigado, Senhor Embaixador, por falar ao See Today.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. So, Your Excellency, as we know, Brazil is Indonesia's sole strategic partner in Latin America and the Caribbean region. In regards to this, how do you intend to leverage this status to enhance the ties between Brazil and Indonesia?
Well, there are a lot of similarities between Brazil and Indonesia. We are both big democracies with a vast territory and a huge and diverse population. We also are countries that want to have a bigger voice in world affairs, and that we also play an important role in our regions. I think that both countries can help each other to find the better path for development and to help our respective populations.
Right, and of course, as we know, Indonesia is the largest trading partner, or rather Brazil is Indonesia's largest trading partner in the Latin America and Caribbean region. So how do you plan to maintain this advantageous position to the mutual benefit of both countries, Mr. Ambassador?
Well, it's true that trade is one of the pillars of our relationship. And there is a coincidence on what Brazil can export and what Indonesia wants to import. So right now our trade is basically on agricultural products, especially corn, soy, cotton, sugar, beef, but there are possibilities in other areas as well. For example, there are possibilities in biofuels that we can develop. And we also should think going farther than that. I know, for example, that very soon Garuda Airlines will organize a tender to buy new airplanes for its fleet. And Brazil is one of the biggest producers of aircraft in the world.
Right. So the third largest, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. So and the kind of planes that we make are very adapted to Indonesia geography. So I think that there is another opportunity there. Of course, I think that we should explore other opportunities like e-commerce, fintechs, those areas. I'm aware of the fact that there is an imbalance in the flows between Brazil and Indonesia. And we are ready to work with our Indonesian partners to identify clusters that could be of interest to Indonesia in order to have a more balanced trade flow.
Right, and Of course, as we have mentioned, Brazil is Indonesia's largest trading partner in Latin America and Caribbean region. But of course, as you mentioned as well, there is still much more room to grow, much more potential. Maybe what kind of challenges that need to be overcome to reach that potential?
We need to have a better market access. I can give you the example of beef. We face a lot of hurdles to sell beef to Indonesia. And you have to understand that Brazil is one of the major producers of stuff in the world. We have the expertise, we sell all over the world, and our prices are very competitive. So I think that if we manage to overcome those hurdles, it will be better for the Indonesian public because it will lower the price of food here. In that respect, we are talking with the incoming new administration to exchange experiences on this program of food for children in schools. And not only to exchange cooperation, but also what kind of products we could sell to Indonesia to make the program cheaper, less expensive.
Right. That's a very exciting prospect, of course. That is something very crucial at this moment. Food, as we know, we've had challenges, geopolitics, inflation, and so forth that has affected food supply. So we are definitely looking forward to that, Your Excellency. Now, you were mentioning about expertise and advancements from Brazil, not just agriculture, but also biofuel. So how can Indonesia learn further regarding this so we can implement?
Well, last year we organized a big meeting here in Indonesia to discuss biofuels, specifically ethanol. It generated a lot of interest. We had around 200 participants in that roadshow, which was opened by the Indonesian Minister of Energy and the Brazilian Minister of Foreign Affairs. And now there are ongoing discussions. I also understand that Indonesia is planning, or an Indonesian state company, more specific, Pertamina, is planning to buy a Brazilian company that produces ethanol so that they will learn the process and they will try to apply it here.
Okay. Do you have any more details on that, perhaps?
Not yet, because they're still in the process of closing the deal, so they don't want to tell me much about it.
Okay, no problem. But that's an exciting prospect as well. I mean, you've already spoken about various sectors that, for more cooperation, but could you maybe elaborate more on the opportunities that Brazil presents for Indonesian investors?
Well, there are the traditional areas where we already have Indonesian companies operating, like in agriculture, cellulose, energy production, biofuels. But as I said, there are new and interesting fields that could be explored, like I mentioned before, fintechs, e-commerce. What is my most important message in that area is that we are willing to work together with our Indonesian partners to identify those areas of interest.
Okay. We are looking for that, Your Excellency. We are looking forward to that, Your Excellency. Now, I want to shift to another topic, which is quite exciting for Indonesia at the moment, which is the development of our new capital city, Nusantara. As we know, Brazil also shifted its capital city, I think back in 1960,
right?
Brasilia. So, given that Brazil has had experience regarding that, what are your thoughts on the development of Indonesia's new capital city, Nusantara, and maybe any Brazilian sort of?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I've been living in Brasilia myself. I've been living there for most of my life. I'm a huge fan of Brasilia. And of course, when Brasilia was built over 60 years ago, the challenges were different. I understand that it's much more difficult to build a new city from scratch today than it used to be in the past. But I think that the reasons why you build a new capital remain the same. First of all, you want to transfer the seat of political power to a place that it's more convenient, that it's more comfortable place, and then you want to put this area, the seat of power in the geographical center of the country, and also you want to open a new economic frontier in areas of the country which are not well developed before. That happened in Brazil, and I see that happening with the ICANN here as well. But I think that equally important is the fact that a new capital is a symbol of how a country wants to present itself to the world and what it can do. And I'm very optimistic. I'm sure that this journey to Indonesia will be a very successful one.
Great. And as you mentioned there as well, one of the objectives of Brasilia was to make it more equitable, because I think the location was more central in Brazil, and it turned out to be a huge success. I think it's the third largest population in the country, right?
That's true. Nobody expected that. You see, like here, you see, there were people that you see in the beginning that they were against the idea of moving to Brasilia, but Brasilia is a very nice place to live in, and I'm sure that Nusantara can also be. It's very convenient, transportation is very easy, connectivity is very easy. It's also very pleasant. We chose an area with very good weather, so it's very nice. The only problem for many Brazilians is that it's far away from the beach. We Brazilians love the beach.
Okay, Your Excellency, so I want to shift to another topic, which is the G20. As we know, Brazil is currently holding the presidency of the G20. So my question is a two-part. First is, could you elaborate on the priority issues established by the Brazilian government as it holds the G20 presidency? And also, as we know, Indonesia held the presidency 2 years ago. Are there any lessons or insights that Brazil has drawn from Indonesia's G20 presidency 2 years ago?
Well, first of all, I think it has to be said that Brazil sees the G20 not only as an economic forum for discussion, but also a forum for coordination in many other issues that are of interest of the world today. In that sense, we established three priorities for our presidency, which are the fight against hunger and poverty, energy transition in the context of sustainable development, and by sustainable development I mean there's three areas of sustainability: the social, the economic, and the environmental. And our third priority is to discuss the democratization of the institutions of global governance. Now, I think that the biggest lesson that we had from Indonesia is, in order for us to be successful in leading the discussions and in coordination the discussions, is we have to show that, you see, the issues are important, that the issues will affect the world as a whole.
Right.
And I think that Indonesia managed to do that when it held the presidency of the G20, and Brazil is being successful as well in that area. And another important point that I would like to mention is that, you see, after Indonesia had the presidency of G20, India took over, and then Brazil this year. And next year, we are going to have South Africa organizing the G20. So for 4 years in a row, we have countries from the Global South organizing the discussions, responsible for coordinating important issues, discussions for different issues. And I think that it's also a big opportunity, but also a big responsibility. And for countries like Brazil and Indonesia, and as Indonesia was successful, I'm sure that Brazil will be successful as well.
Okay, Ms. Ambassador, we're going to take a very short break first, but after that, we are going to continue our discussion regarding the promising trade and business ties between Brazil and Indonesia right after the break, so stay tuned to See Today Business. Welcome back to See Today Business Talk. I'm still joined by Brazil's ambassador to Indonesia, His Excellency George Monteiro Prata, to discuss further regarding the promising trade and business ties between Brazil and Indonesia. So another major event that we are looking forward to this year is INALAC 2024, the Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean Business Forum that is coming this September. It is a flagship event to enhance economic relations between Indonesia, Latin America, and the Caribbean countries. So what is your perspective on INALAC, and how has this benefited the economic stakeholders of the country, especially since it was first incepted in 2019? Have you seen a big...
I think that the first challenge that we face is that, you see, Latin America and the Caribbean and Indonesia are in the opposite sides of the world.
Yeah.
So a forum like INALAC provides us an opportunity for us to be together. And I think it's very good that this time, you see, Indonesia is bringing INALAC to the continent. I mean, it's not being held here. And for sure, it will be a big opportunity for Latin American stakeholders to get to know better the trade opportunities, the investment opportunities here in Indonesia, and also the other way around, for Indonesians to get to know the business environment in Latin America better. From, you see, the Brazilian perspective, we believe that, you see, there is a huge potential for, you see, business from the two countries to get together and to do things together.
Yes.
And I'm sure that INALAC will have an important role in that as well.
Mr. Ambassador, just very lastly, which areas of future collaboration between Indonesia and Brazil do you believe hold the greatest potential for mutual benefit? I know there's already so many that you mentioned. But
yeah, there are a lot. There are a lot of areas that we could discuss. There are the traditional areas like agriculture, like energy. I'd like to mention, for example, that very soon the Minister of Agriculture of Indonesia will be visiting Brazil, and he'll be taking part of, you see, the G20 discussions on agriculture, and we are organizing an agenda for him of visits for him to get together with Brazilian food producers to discuss what kind of opportunities we could have. The same with another traditional area, which is biofuel. I think, as I mentioned, this roadshow that we organized last year provided a lot of new information, generated a lot of new opportunities, and I believe this is one of the reasons why we have an Indonesian company interested in learning more about how we do that in Brazil. But I also would like to think about other areas. I'd like to look at the future. So why don't we cooperate in science and technology? And I'm planning to work on that. I think that our scientific institutions, academic institutions, could exchange experiences in that area as well. I could mention AI, artificial intelligence, as a promising area, semiconductors as another promising area. So there are a wide variety of themes that we could talk about, and not to mention, for example, cooperation, future cooperation in international fora. There are so many subjects that or issues that are of interest to Brazil and Indonesia. I can mention, you see, environmental issues. how we deal with that, how we finance our actions regarding climate change, and how we avoid that other countries can use that as an excuse to create trade barriers to both Brazil and Indonesia. So I'm very optimistic about, the possibilities of our relationship. Now it's up to me to work even harder to make it happen.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure, and we are definitely looking forward to that. As you mentioned, very, very important key sectors that we collaborate on, including biofuels as well. What about travel and tourism, though, Your Excellency?
You know, there are a lot of Brazilians that come to Indonesia. Very specifically, they come to Bali. Before COVID, I understand that over 20,000 Brazilians visited Bali every year.
Wow.
Which for me, it's very surprising because we have tropical beaches in Brazil as well. But I think that what attracts Bali, it's also the Balinese unique culture.
Okay.
But since I've been here, I realized that there are many other areas that Brazilians could be visiting. And also that they are talking about Brazil. Brazil is a huge continental country. I mean, Indonesians could be there. We have to try to be creative and find ways to work on that, because I think that the distance is the main difficulty that we have to overcome.
Yes, of course, distance, but as we know, it is the largest trading partner, Brazil, for Indonesia, and we really do hope for more collaborations in many key sectors, as you mentioned. Your Excellency, Ambassador George Monteiro Prata, thank you so much for speaking to See Today, and we hope to speak to you again in the future as we see more of these collaborations coming to fruition.
No, thank you very much for giving me to speak a little bit about the relationship between Brazil and Indonesia.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank
Ambassador.
you. Bye-bye.
And that was our conversation on Brazil-Indonesia trade, business, and investment ties for See Today Business Talk. You can stay connected with us on Instagram, X, and YouTube. Our handle is @SeeTodayNews. You can also stay connected with us through our website, seetodaynews.com. So let's stay connected.